I try to pick the pieces in my mind, put them in a pretty little line for you to see. I try.
Hello everyone, I'm Joe Collins and this is Dear DM, a Dungeons & Dragons advice podcast where each episode I sit down with a different dungeon master in order to discuss, debate, and hopefully answer your D&D related questions. Thank you so much for joining me. I would like to start with a bit of an announcement. Without saying too much, in a couple episodes, through a series of completely inexplicable events, will be lucky enough to have one of the greats of D&D joining me on the show. I don't want to spoil anything just yet, but we're talking a household name for many of us D&D nerds, and I'm beyond excited. So if you want to hear your question potentially answered by a genuine legend on an upcoming episode, please submit those questions to us either on Twitter at DearDMPodcast or to our email at deardm.submit@gmail.com. Or even to our new space within the Nerdsmith Discord channel, where you can submit questions, talk about the show, and hang out with me and a bunch of other lovely nerdy people. You can find that by going to www.nerdsmith.org and clicking the little Discord symbol at the top. For today, I am very lucky to be joined by a fantastic artist and DM, Kea. Thank you for joining me, Kea.
I am so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Time to nerd out about some D&D. So first of all, I guess the first question would be, how did you get started with D&D? I know you're more of a recent comer than some of the DMs we've had on, but you still have a good amount of experience, right?
About a year coming up this spring. I feel like perhaps most of the people watching or listening to the podcast, Critical Role really was the catalyst. But I would say before that, a bunch of friends of mine from high school had joked about doing it before, but none of us really wanted to, put forth the effort to be a DM. We joked about finding a DM, but it feels like one of those things you're not sure you can really trust them. You're not sure who you're dealing with. And it wasn't until college where, I had actually participated in the game and had a little taste. I thought maybe I could do this, but really Critical Role was that very strong jumping point where I said, you know what? We're never going to find anyone good enough. I will just take up the helm myself, and honestly, I'm addicted to it. Do they have an AA meeting for DMs? Because I feel that's needed.
We might have to start one. Yeah, that's how I think 90% of DMs get started, is they start reluctantly and then they're like, oh my, that it is very addicting. That's awesome. So what kind of games have you run so far? What's some of the favorite games that you've run?
As of right now, for the most part, I've just been working with Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I had mentioned potentially doing Vampire the Masquerade and what's the one they did a couple times in Adventure Zone? Shadow of the Apocalypse?
Oh, yeah. There was a couple different ones they did. There's the Apocalypse system, and then there's like Urban Shadows, but they're all like kind of versions of the same system. But yeah, no, that seems like a lot of fun. I haven't tried that either.
It's certainly on the list.
Yeah. Have you gotten to play much yet, or have you just jumped in as a DM primarily?
A little bit of both. Right now, I'm in between setting up 2 different one-shots, one for my coworkers at my day job, and another for a group of friends who I'm familiar with 1 or 2 of them, and a couple that I've never met before. I will be doing a Skyrim one-shot for them, because we're all huge nerds of the Elder Scrolls, myself included. And for my coworkers, I'm basically doing a short story based on the concept of what would happen if you had effectively a guidebook that tried to eat you. And that's going to be kind of the core thing behind it. But as of tomorrow, I will be resuming my role as the player character. My character is Camellia, who is a paladin who is very bad at religion. So I get a little bit of both. I very much enjoy being the DM. I have all the answers. I know, for the most part, where the story is going to go, unless the players decide, let's have a shopping episode. But at the same time, I also get to be the person who says, hey guys, want a shopping episode?
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel you. I really like the sound of both those one-shots. That you'll have to update me on how those go. But yeah, do we want to go ahead and jump into the questions portion of the show?
Absolutely.
Awesome. We had some lovely questions sent in by folks this week. Let's start out with this one. They ask, my current table is pretty inexperienced. I'm running them through the Forge of Fury, which is an awesome dungeon, but on the bigger maps they get really overwhelmed by all the choices available. Do you have any tips for ways I can manage that sense of too many choices without railroading them? And that's from Theron.
Well, just because I'm going to be with a group of people who aren't as familiar as, say, more experienced players, I don't feel it's necessarily a bad thing to railroad them, but I feel the term railroad tends to have a negative stigma to it. Mm-hmm. I would say you're more in tutorial mode. You may have a character that tells them everything that's in the town, or maybe point out a couple characters of interest, and introduce the options that they may have available to you. Like, say, for example, oh, here's a plot thread here, but, there's this one guy in town, he kind of has a mixed bag with a little bit of everybody. We don't really know what his deal is, but maybe he knows something about, this individual you're looking for, or maybe he knows a cool place to hang out and listen to the town gossip.
Absolutely, yeah, I 100% agree with that. This was one question that came up in the news space in the Nerdsmith Discord, so I actually talked with some folks there a little bit about this already. But the main thing that I said was, I agree with it 100%. It's the problem with the term railroading. The reason why people have a problem with it is not because you're guiding them, it's because you're stuck on a track. There's no opportunity to get off that path. It's not the issue of having the path in the first place, it's that you're stuck on it. So like you said, it's kind of one of those things where you're guiding them along, you're giving them a clear way forward, but then you can't shy away when they try to go a different path. That's when you actually want to encourage them diverging from what you have planned. But yeah, I 100% agree. With new players, sometimes it is necessary to put those training wheels on. I specifically remember my dungeon master doing the same thing for me the first couple times I played when I was really young. Like, I having no idea what I'm doing, but the second I'm like, well, instead of disguising myself, can I just set that building on fire as a distraction? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. And that's when you start to get hooked on D&D, I feel, is that moment where you realize you can go off the path.
Oh, absolutely. I know I've been guilty of that. I recently in my campaign, quick story, we basically made Molotovs, and I had said to my GM, hey, can I pull some crazy Mulan bullshit right now? She says, what do you have in mind? And I said, can I take this effective oil bomb and throw it at this hillside and just make like a mini avalanche? No, I respect that you're trying to think outside the box, but no.
Yeah, that is the key question when you're a DM is, what do you want to do, and then how do you want to do it? Because if I were a DM in that scenario, I'd be like, yes, you can make this work theoretically, but you have to have a plan that would theoretically make it work. That's kind of that balance you got to do between rule of cool and rule of, well, it's got to be reasonable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I actually had a scenario recently like that where one of my players was it's one of those things where, especially with spells, I feel it comes up very often where it's like, can I make the spell do this? And you really have to be like, is this going to set a bad precedent, or is this just a really cool thing they're going to do one time?
Yeah, or if fans of the Adventure Zone are here, they always try to say, well, wait a minute, the spell's a bit open. Can I do this? And you feel in the back of Griffin's mind, his entire story just falls apart. And he almost is compelled to say, no. But in the setting of the universe, it may end up working out okay. I don't know. It fills me with as much laughter as it does fear of a player doing that to me.
Oh yeah, well, Griffin handles that magnificent. I mean, they have a very special kind of game because they're all brilliant with improv, and they're all very good at just saying, let's do this for the entertainment value of what if we made this work. And That's the thing, is like, it also depends entirely on the style of game you're running. There's absolutely been games I've run where it's like, we're not trying to be serious here, let's go with it. And I feel like Griffin is the master of making that work.
100%.
Yep. I am constantly inspired, like, especially the fact that I think he got some shit thrown at him for having elevators in a fantasy setting, and then
Yeah.
and then went to the trouble of making an in-universe elevator museum to explain their existence.
And then shows up for the final battle in no less Lifty.
This is your probably daily reminder from the internet that if you haven't watched Adventure Zone or listened to Adventure Zone yet, do it, please.
Do it. It is so worth the time.
It is.
You will
so
probably
brilliant.
cry at the ending, because I know I thought, oh, I'm not going to cry. No, I totally cried.
Oh god, I don't think there's a single human being alive who could listen to that last episode without bawling.
It's so deceptively good up front. It is 100% worth the time investment.
Yes. And then, so I think we answered the question pretty easily. With newer players, go ahead and guide them. They're gonna need guidance. It's just part of learning any game. But yeah, let's move on to the next question. This one I find pretty interesting because it's something that I had a lot of trouble with as an early DM. And they ask, how do you make puzzles for dungeons? They never seem to go well for my players. Usually, they never get the usually simple answer, even with hints. And that's from Earl Grey Tiefling.
If I remember, Earl Grey Tiefling had also submitted a question before. Welcome back.
Yeah, I think Earl Grey is a regular at this point, as close to a regular as we have, and we appreciate those kinds of folks here.
To answer your question, that's just it. It's kind of a mixed bag, really, who is going to be in the party who is good at puzzles or is open to all kinds of clues that you may give to them, sometimes subtly, sometimes overtly. It's kind of hard to predict, because I know for me, I gave them a puzzle, my original group, and they were able to figure it out without too much trouble. To make a long story short, I was making a reference to Phantom of the Opera. They had to mess with a series of levers, and the chandelier came crashing down, and that opened up a weight that opened the doors to what is effectively the Thieves Guild. So,
okay.
I guess I would say, perhaps before you introduce the idea of puzzles, maybe ask them what kind of puzzles they enjoy, or maybe ones that they struggle with. So if it's like maybe a color puzzle or a memory puzzle, maybe some people in the party are better than others. Definitely look at character skills. If you know who offers what from the party, try to tailor some things to different skills, like maybe it's opening locks, or maybe it's knowing certain magical items. That would at least be my advice in a general sense, but just definitely talk to your players before you go ahead and construct puzzles, because the last thing you want to do is make a puzzle that you put a lot of time invested into it, and you are getting just as frustrated as the players, because you don't want to outright tell them how this works. But you can't be on the fault of the players if it's just not coming across to them the way you want it to. Absolutely.
And that's, I think, a struggle for a lot of DMs want to make that, like, very clever puzzle that has, like, it's a riddle in the lore, and it's, they have to figure it out, but that rarely works out unless you have it very fine-tuned, and that's difficult to do. One thing you can always do is steal simple puzzles from even, like, we mentioned Skyrim earlier, simple ones like match the icons, like the symbology, or doing locks that way, or simple visual Zelda or Skyrim style puzzles are a good way to make them feel like they've accomplished a mini task without them just opening a door, without it being like something that they have a chance of like taking forever, just running in circles trying to figure out. But one cheat code essentially that I've found for puzzles as a DM is sometimes you just want to lay something a little cryptic and interesting in front of them and don't have a solution in mind. Just wait until they come up with a satisfying solution, something that was clever or something that would make sense, and then let that be what solves the puzzle. Because that oftentimes is what goes awry, is you may have a puzzle set up that has like a series of things that they need to do, but they can never seem to get that exact series, whereas if you just leave it ambiguous, then whenever they come up with something that they feel is particularly clever, it doesn't matter if they were right or wrong. If they feel like they were clever about it, you can say, yes, you found the solution. You have solved my puzzle. And it's a little bit dirty, but it gets the intended result that, like, is hard to get otherwise, I find. But a lot of that's just balance in general.
Yeah, that could actually be really good. It saves you some time for coming up with a solution. You go, you know what? That was my plan from the beginning. You have solved my puzzle.
Yep, that is 90% of being a DM is being like, yes, I planned that all along. Oh, yeah. But yeah, so in general with puzzles, you want to err for the size of simple, and if it's complicated, then be prepared to have a backup of, yes, that was the solution. But yeah, I think if we want, we can go ahead and jump into the fun little game we have in the middle.
I'm ready.
Nice. We can start making some characters. For those who might not have listened to previous episodes, each episode, we sit down and we create some characters off of some random character tables that I have made. We create usually 3, and then pick a favorite child out of them for us to flesh out. And then everyone at home can go ahead and make character art or a bio or a short story, whatever inspires them. As usual, we had some fantastic submissions this week from Travis Mattingly, who is basically our official artist at this point. He's been killing it consistently for who knows how long. And then we had a wonderful, an awesome submission from Bex on Twitter. It was just fantastic. I love looking at everything that comes out of it. But yeah, so we're gonna make some characters, and then all you creative types can go about seeing what that inspires you to do. So do you have a D20 ready?
I'm ready to go.
Alright, then let's go ahead and do the first roll, which is for race.
Alright. That is a 9.
9 is Tiefling.
Ooh.
Yes, one of my favorites. And then we'll roll for profession as well.
14.
14 is Artist. All right, I already like this character.
Certainly my people. Indeed.
And then a background.
6.
6 is Gladiator. Okay. that throws something in the mix. An Artist, Gladiator, Tiefling. And then let's go ahead and get a quirk with that last roll.
Also a 6.
Speaks in a dignified, formal tone, even in casual conversation. This is an interesting character for the first run. I'm just imagining like a very floral, like wonderfully ostentatious tiefling who just happens to also occasionally go to the arena to do a gladiatorial battle or two.
I mean, whatever you gotta do to get that reference material.
Yes, good. And then let's go ahead and make a couple more, see what else we come up with. So let's roll for race again.
10.
Goliath. Then we got profession.
15.
Tinkerer. All right. We're getting some non-traditional characters. That is good. Then let's go with background.
19.
19 is investigator. All right. And then quirk.
19 again.
Easily deceived by anyone who uses words he doesn't understand.
Perfect for an investigator.
So I'm almost imagining like a mix between Grog and an Inspector Gadget at this point. Like...
Yeah, or like Percy and Grog had a kid and it just... I don't know how it copes.
I like this very contradictory character. It's very endearing to me. But yeah, let's do one more. See what else we can whip up.
1.
That's human. Natural 1 of races. And then let's go with profession.
17.
17 is politician. All right.
Natural 20.
Natural 20 is bounty hunter. Okay. And then quirk.
17.
17 refers to self in the third person. Alright, so this one's a little out there. Got a human politician who's also happens to be a bounty hunter and then refers to himself in the third person. I feel like politician probably came after the bounty hunter career, rather than vice versa.
Yeah, kind of like when celebrities get older, they start to move into other fields to make money. I feel someone who is retired as a hunter, bounty hunter specifically, would then choose, let's just go into politics.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely a D&D character style of thing to do. It's like, I've got to retire my character. I guess there's a position open. He's probably going to try and run the town, even though it's not his strong suit. But, so what do you think so far? What of the three, the Tiefling Artist Gladiator, who, what quirk did we go with that for that? Oh yeah, speaks in a dignified, formal tone. The Goliath Tinkerer, Investigator, who gets confused by words he doesn't understand. Or the Human Politician Bounty Hunter, who refers to himself in the third person.
Oh, honestly, I think playing any of them would be amazing in a session, but I think I gotta go with our Goliath Tinkerer.
Yeah, it's just too good. It's too good of an option. Like, I just love the idea of a giant Goliath who is simultaneously very intuitive with, like, tinkering and, like, is pretty intelligent, but also just doesn't have the best vocabulary.
Probably very low wisdom scores on this guy.
Yeah, 100%. That insight is awful. Alright, awesome. Then we have made our decision. Those of you at home who might be inspired by a Goliath Tinkerer Investigator who gets deceived by big words, if you want to go ahead and submit your fan art to us, or your bio or whatever, to us on Twitter, at DearDMPodcast, or to our email at deardm.submit@gmail.com. I love seeing those every week. It is the highlight of my week, and we appreciate all that you artsy types do. Because, well, people like Kaya can, but I can't, so.
It's okay, to be fair, I cannot sing, but you are amazing as Percy.
God.
If anyone is listening to this right now who has not heard Vox Machina, an Exandrian musical, you need to listen to that right after this podcast. It is amazing. When I first heard it, I went, oh my god, he sounds just like Percy! How is he doing that?
And this has just become an experiment to see if people can hear the sound of a blush over the sound of the internet. This has now become an experiment. But thank you, I appreciate that. Oh, it was probably the most fun thing I've ever done.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. And I got to meet so many cool and nerdy people through it, so it was definitely a highlight. But yeah, so let's go ahead, and now that we have a cool character behind us, let's go ahead and jump back into the questions.
All right.
This one is, how do we tell our DM that he's terrible and no one is having fun? Because that's happening in my real-life campaign gaming group right now, and it's kind of ugly when we're staring at a 200-plus page campaign in the face. As a side issue, he's the kind of person who will not take feedback well, and that's from Ben.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard through the grapevine that being in a D&D group in general, be it the DM, be it the players, it's always best to play with people that you wouldn't mind being in a very long car ride with. But it sounds like you guys are at hour 20, and maybe the sessions are just getting really stressful. I would just say, like, maybe take your DM out for a drink, be in a very low-pressure environment, and just say, hey, we have some concerns. This is not, like, anything personal. It's just, it's not fun for us, and this could also mean that it's less fun for you. So let's just have, like, a very cool, open environment where we can all talk about, you know, hey, maybe throw not too many big baddies at us quite as much, or maybe your puzzles are a little hard to circumvent or, you know, get through. Really, I would just say, if he's your DM and potentially a friend, I'm not sure if that was part of the question, I would like to think that they would be open enough if everybody came together in just an environment that is not perceived as an attack, and who knows, it may end up going well, or at least fingers crossed for you.
Yep, and worst case scenario, he takes it poorly, and you know it's probably time to call it Yeah, that's the thing, is that, like, so much of this, like you said, does depend on context. It depends on the issues that you're having. Some of them are fixable, some of them aren't. And a lot of it, part of it is also the fact of, one thing you have to consider is he actually a terrible DM, or is he just playing a different kind of game from what you want? Because it could be entirely possible that for other folks, he'd be a great DM. However, as much as we do say, like, so much of it is communication and so much of it is, just finding the right kind of campaign, it's probably bad to say, there are bad DMs. There are people who do not have players that have fun. There is, unfortunately, technically, there is a wrong way to run Dungeons and Dragons, and that is when no one is having fun but the DM. So, in the case that does happen, and in the case that if you do take them aside and they take it poorly and nothing gets fixed, and no matter what you do, it doesn't seem fixable, the number one piece of advice I can give, which I believe I stole most of my advice I stole from either Matthew Mercer or Matt Colville at some point in the past. But I think I stole this one from Colville a while back. And it's that no D&D is better than non-fun D&D. Bad D&D is not worth it doing it in and of itself. And it's better to take a break from D&D until you can find a good group or people you really want to play with, than to try and slog through this and just, like, do it because you want to do D&D, even though this isn't a fun time. Because then you're just going to eventually, if you do enough of that, you're going to start resenting D&D altogether and kind of forget what makes it fun in the first place.
Yeah, that would really be a shame, because it can be really so fun.
Oh yeah, and I've kind of been in this scenario before where I legitimately had to leave a group just because no matter... we had that kind of soft intervention of saying, hey, this isn't working out for us, can we try something slightly different? And it didn't work out. I just had to take a break for a while. I left the group and waited until I could start or find another one, because bad D&D is not a good substitute versus no D&D. But yeah, I 100% agree with what you said, is that depending on the scenario, depending on what the problems with the group are, especially with a 200 plus page campaign and staring you in the face, talk to them first. Even if you think they might not take it well, the worst they can do is freak out about it, and you know it's time to go. You know it's not going to work out, and you've at least done something to try and fix it. But yeah, I think for the most part we answered that one. It's an unfortunate scenario. Sometimes there's not really any easy solutions other than, doing what you can. But I think that's about as good as an answer as we're going to get on that one. So the next question, or final question for the day, is also one of my favorite kinds, which is deceivingly simple. And that is, what is your policy on the DM fudging dice rolls? And that's from Dicey Decisions.
Ooh. I try to do that as little as possible, because you definitely want to earn trust with your players. I know some DMs will roll in front of their players. I personally don't, but I play with people that are good friends of mine, and we build up trust outside of the game. There's been maybe once or twice I've fudged a dice roll, but it was good for the moment. It made sense. Like, if it was something like, oh, so close, then okay, maybe I'll be like, all right, this happens, but perhaps not quite as effectively as it may have had I rolled a little higher. But the answer is this: try to do that as little as possible. You do not want mistrust with your players in you. That just never is a good thing.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing, is that there are definitely times I'm pretty much the same way. I try to avoid it as much as possible, but sometimes you end up, it's just, you kind of have to. Especially, I've talked to some people about this before. Really, the number one exception for doing this is with brand new players. Cause recently I had a session in one of my real life games, and we had someone who had never played before, and they were level 3, they were going up against the Bone Naga, and I'm sitting there rolling for the attack, and it's like, oh, they just critted on this new character, this will instantly kill them. let's pretend that didn't happen, so that this new player can have a bit of fun their first time rather than sit out the rest of combat. That scenario with new players, you really kind of do sometimes have to fudge the rolls and put on the kitty gloves just to ensure that they don't instantly hate it because they got an unlucky roll of the dice. But in general, like you said, it's a matter of trust. It's a matter of playing with people that you won't accuse you of fudging, even though you're not rolling in front of them. Because that's the whole point of the DM screen, is to keep your side of things a bit of a mystery, and so that they might not even know which dice you're rolling. But in terms of fudging, you definitely want to, and that's the main thing, is the question does focus on the DM fudging dice rolls. Players, never. Never, ever, 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 ever do you ever want to have a player fudging dice rolls, because that's just cheating. And it's that I have never seen a table so quickly get so salty as a player getting caught fudging their dice roll.
Yeah, I feel there's a checks and balances that just happens naturally when it's the player attempting to fudge a dice roll. There's gonna be someone looking at your dice, just A, out of curiosity, and B, although probably not their motive, would just be like, hey, no, don't even try that. Yep.
And that's like one of those things where, because with the DM, I've never had that's the thing, is it also depends on motive. It's one thing if you're fudging a dice roll so that a player doesn't take too much damage, or that a monster doesn't, immediately go out of a fight too soon. If it's for like a dramatic reason that'll make the game more interesting, that's less of a sin. If it's for, I don't want the players to succeed because it's a DM that has a player versus DM mentality, which some people play that way, but I generally don't enjoy. If they're doing it for those reasons, then that's just as much cheating as if a player does it. If you're fudging the dice rolls in order to get an upper hand on your players where you otherwise wouldn't, and it's not for a dramatic reason or for ensuring that the player who should get the dramatic killing blow gets it, or something to that effect, then you're just doing it the same reason a cheating player would cheat. So I think motive goes into that as well, as does with most things. With most things, the DM, so much of it depends on why you're doing it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, being a DM, you are effectively making a story for the players. It's their story, but they're in your world, so you should be serving them. It's less about your motives and less about, ooh, I'm going to throw big baddies at you. Wah. No, it's more like, I'm going to throw these big baddies at you because when you beat them, you're going to go off into the world telling people about how amazing you were or how amazing your character was, depending on how into your stuff you are. Because I know if I try to describe myself as my characters, my coworkers look at me a little funny.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. So I think that's gonna do it for us here at Dear DM for today. Before we go, I just wanted to remind everyone to please send in your questions so that we can read them on the show, either to our Twitter account at Dear DM Podcast, or in an email to deardm.submit@gmail.com, or now you can go ahead and submit it on the Nerdsmith Discord channel, where if you want, I can talk to you about it. You can talk to a bunch of neat folks about it and go a bit more in depth than we can on the show. The more questions we get, the more content we can produce for all you lovely people, and the happier I'll be. And if you're enjoying the podcast so far, it would mean the world to us if you could share it with your friends, give us a shout out on Twitter, give us a review on iTunes. All of that somehow gives us power. I don't know the exact magics behind it, but we grow more powerful with each iTunes review. And as always, I want to thank my dear friend Paul Parisa for the use of his song, Whether or Not, as our intro and outro music. He's a brilliant musician. Go check him out. And finally, I want to thank all the lovely folks at Nerdsmith for welcoming us into the network. It's been absolutely wonderful working with everyone there, doing collaborations. I'm actually going to be on the Roll Like a Girl podcast sometime in the near future. We'll keep you updated, but it's fun. We just recorded it. It's very fun, and they're all lovely people. With that, also, of course, thank you, Kaya, so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We met because you're actually an artist for Nerdsmith. You've done a lot of the character art and everything. Why don't you tell folks a bit about your art and where they can find you and commission you for your brilliant stuff?
As of right now, I'm in talks right now with Nerdsmith. Currently, I'm working on some of the full body work for Shenanigans, so look forward to that soon. I will be having a commissioning page up on Nerdsmith. It's still a work in progress because I still have quite a bit of commissions to finish up first, but it will be coming around soon. You can also find me at kea.hiwatari.tumblr.com. You can find some of my work there. I try to update it frequently, or at least the things I'm allowed to, because some things are under NDAs.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. As always, we like to end the show with a fun game tale or, something interesting that happened at your table. So do you have a particular fun story you'd like to share?
Oh, indeed I do.
Good.
So, my current DM at one point decided she wanted to do a one-shot where we were all going to play villains. And I said, ooh, I have an idea. So I played the Black Dragonborn Oathbreaker Paladin named Razir.
Ooh.
Basically, Razir was the type who believed you are a weapon. You kill. That is your purpose. Well, unfortunately, in our group, the way the narrative went, Kel, who was the main villain of the story, had the Book of Vile Secrets, and every person, aside from me, had a motive to get this book. Granted, we didn't really know what was in it, we just knew you would get a lot of power. Well, one of the party members tried to steal it. It didn't go well. She ended up getting taken out pretty soon. But it was at that point Kel realized that everyone was turning on her, except me, because I was her right hand. So she demanded that Razir stand in front of her and effectively defeat 4 other villains, one of whom had just received her, let's just call it, archdemon powers, which was all kinds of scary. So it's me versus 4 other people. So the first guy steps up. His name's Buddy. He was a warforged of some form, and he was going to make his 2 attacks against Razir. So he makes his first attack, and I barely survive. He's about to do his second blow, and that's when I say, DM, can I use a reaction right now? She knew exactly what I was going to do, and said, do it, Razir, do it. And I unleashed Hellish Rebuke upon Buddy, and he fell. Oh. And it was then the player's like, oh, come on, are you serious? I'm like, oh my god, I did it! I took down one! The guy next to him shoots 2 crossbows into me. Oh! But then, when my next turn came around, the DM said, alright, Razir, make your first death saving throw. I rolled a nat 20. And I popped right back up. And I went, ha-ha! And then the Archdemon decided to emulate me. And I went back down. So, the shorthand, haha, I have defeated you, buddy. And then I pop right back up, and then I'm set on fire.
Oh my god, that is wonderful.
Surprisingly, though, she survived. A lot of things happened in between, but she ended up surviving the session, and she will become a villain in our main campaign later on.
That is perfect. That is wonderful. It's always wonderful when the natural 20 just brings them back up and throws a wrench in everything. Oh god. But yes, thank you so much for joining me. That's gonna do it for us here on Dear DM. As always, I don't actually have a catchphrase to end the show with, so for now, goodbye.
Bye!
You pull the gem from the statue. The roof shakes and starts to collapse. Nim, what are you doing?
I'm going to cast Zephyr Strike and dash behind Talmor.
Okay, Talmor, what are you doing?
I think I'm going to try and catch it.
Okay. Ordok, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm downloading the latest Do or Dice podcast.
What?
Wait, what? Oh, it's this new homebrew D&D campaign. Yeah, you can find it on all the podcast providers and doordicepodcast.com.
The ceiling falls and you all die. This TPK proudly brought to you by nerdsmith.org.